So let's talk about some of the obstacles that sellers often face when they're dealing with the RFP process. This will hopefully nail down some of the things that we should avoid, as well as help us identify some of the things we really need to think harder about getting involved with. Well, like I said, sometimes the biggest challenge we're going to run into is the RFP response deadline is tomorrow. And we just can't do it. Not only can we not do it, if we did do it, we'd do a poor job at it. That's the bottom line. So we want to make sure, of course, that we are able to do a good job. If you were asking me seriously how I'm going to help you spend your money, the last thing I want to do is just throw something out there because I don't have the time to really think it through. For two reasons. First of all, it's not going to do the advertiser any good to be dealing with a proposal that really doesn't meet their needs. And second of all, let's say that you just didn't really think it through, and the next thing you know, the work is coming in, and now you're beholden to whatever you put in the proposal, and either you can't fulfill it, or the ad suit sizes are wrong, or you don't have the inventory. You see my problem. So you want to make sure that the bottom line for media buyers is that the publishers get enough time to do a good job. And sometimes what it really just means is calling them up. And I'm quite serious about this. Sometimes to just call the advertiser or the media buying company or whomever is at the other end of this RFP and say, hey, we really want to participate here. What is the realistic deadline? Could you give us until Wednesday to get something of merit back to you? Sometimes they'd say absolutely yes, no problem. This date is a little bit flexible, and other times they'll say no, absolutely not. We need to have it by X date. In my experience, there's a lot more wiggle room here than most of the RFPs would make you believe. They just want to get the stuff back. They want to be able to get it back so they can start comparing. But frankly, if there's an opportunity for you to help the advertiser position their ads and get them in front of the right people, it's worth the extra time for them to give to you so you can do it right. You also need to be realistic about what you can do with limited time. If they say, okay, well, you only have until Friday morning, if the due date is unrealistic, like I said, negotiate with the advertiser for more time, or you know what? Just bow out. It's easy enough to do. Hopefully another one will come in. Yes, nobody wants to turn money away, but the other side of it is you don't want to create a waste of time or a headache for yourself and still not get the job in because it either didn't show up on time or whatever. And frankly, your future credibility needs to be taken into account as well. If an advertiser comes to you and says, we need, and you do a hatchet job, something that you slap together during a lunch break, then it's probably going to show. And if they're going to look at that and say, well, publisher X, I don't think we want to do business with them because basically what they sent over to us isn't even worthy of consideration because they didn't answer our questions. They didn't talk about what we need to talk about. They didn't really talk about whether they can reach the people we're trying to reach, and frankly, it's just a waste of paper. It looks pretty much like boilerplate, probably, because it is. So you want to make sure that you don't do a rush job on these things. Now, once again, it's going to depend on what you're kicking out the door, but in most cases, you do want to customize them to make sure that they meet the needs of the specific RFP that is being addressed. And also ask the advertiser what it is that they really want sometimes. There will be times when you look at an RFP and you should just make notes all over the place saying, what do you really want? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Because sometimes the RFPs are so vague, you're not going to get a better understanding of what it is that they want until you pick up the phone and say, well, what is it you really want and how can we help you here? Like I said, it's going to take extra time. Having somebody on staff who can get on the phone and say, we got your RFP, we'd love to help you out here, but we're trying to get a better sense of what it is we can do to make this a fantastic opportunity and campaign for you. So it's going to be time consuming, but you know what? You also reach out to people. You get some more people that you can talk to who know you. It's really good face-to-face, some good intimate relationships. And I think in my experience, it really turns out best in the end. You have someone you can turn to and call up and say, hey, let me help you. By the way, just because an advertiser sends in an RFP doesn't mean they know what they're doing. Oftentimes, it's one of those things that ends up being a lower echelon job, and it's not really fair. Well, let's let the intern send out the RFP this week. But it almost sounds like that. And so sometimes what you will get is an RFP that doesn't make sense because the person who wrote it or put it together doesn't know what they're doing. So you need to make sure that they understand or help them out. And sometimes as a publisher, to reach out to an advertiser who looks like they don't know what they're doing and providing them with a little bit of counsel and a little bit of solutions provision, you can really turn things around. It's a great upsell opportunity to be able to say, I think we can help you here, but let's talk about realistic parameters. Let's talk about what we can do to make this work for you and how much it's going to cost. And by the way, if you're reading through something in an RFP and it doesn't make sense, don't jump through hoops. Sometimes that's not what the advertiser is looking to have you do. They're not trying to make things difficult. Sometimes they just don't know what they don't know. They're not able to ask the right questions. They're not able to ask for what they want because they don't know how to do it yet. And so sometimes it's a great opportunity to get back and say, hey, I'm here to help. Let me see what we can do to make things, and hopefully you can clarify some of your needs for me, and I'll come up with a customized solution. By the way, do you have the willingness or the time to ask the advertisers if the information in their RFP is unclear? This is a thing you should be asking yourselves internally. Are you willing to read an RFP over a few times to be able to identify what they're asking for and what they're not asking for? And are there expressed needs that you can't meet? Once again, you may not be able to meet their needs, but you may be able to meet other needs. So instead of saying, well, we can't do that for you, I guess we're out of the running, it gives you an opportunity to call them up and say, we can't do that for you, but we can do this for you. Would this be of interest to you? Because once again, as publishers, you're more familiar with the advertising process than most advertisers are because they're dealing with a very limited number of brands. And you're dealing with a lot more. If you're doing it right, obviously. You want to be able to provide different solutions. So think creatively. Think about ways that you can offer these different solutions to help them out. If you can come up with a unique selling proposition, it really gives you a way to not only differentiate yourself from everybody else who's also responding to this RFP, but also to stand out from the crowd as being innovative. Instead of saying, okay, well, you want to buy straight impressions, we can do that for you. What you can do instead is say, yeah, we could do straight impressions. However, let's talk about some other things that we might be able to do to give you the exposure that you want. So we can land a unique deal if we're willing to listen and read between the lines and identify what it is that the advertiser is looking for. So for example, maybe you can offer some sort of takeover page opportunity or roadblock so they get full share of voice whenever anyone goes to the landing page. Maybe there's a sponsorship opportunity that's not listed as part of your media kit, but it's something you could work in there. And they could say, well, we're trying to get exposure, we want to get our brand out there. We say, well, we have some pages that could really use a sponsor that really cater to your target audience. So every time anyone comes there, they're going to see your brand, there's going to be a click-through opportunity, etc. What do you think of something like that? All right. And also, if you want, of course, you can work and identify and say, well, who are your competitors? Who do you not want to be listed with? Because in our network, we have some control over how the ads run and how they run with, and we don't want to necessarily put your ads up there with the competitors. So let's talk about what we can do to sweeten the deal. By the way, really, really important from a publisher standpoint is to communicate with the advertisers that these deals are all perishable. And by perishable, I mean they have to at some point make a decision or go away, because you can't sit there and get strung along and have them say a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, yeah, we think we want to do this with you, we're still pulling things together. You have inventory to sell. And if you're turning away prospects because you may not have enough inventory to offer them because you have this big advertiser who wants to buy 1.5 million impressions or whatever, you might have to say to them, this deal expires in 24 hours or 48 hours. You make a decision, you're part of the media buy. If not, we're going to relinquish those impressions or this opportunity and we're going to sell it to somebody else. You have to be firm on this sometimes, otherwise you will find that these things have the tendency to slip.